Hi guys, I'm Matt Slater from Zapchain, and I'm here with Matt Slater, CEO of Hedgie, and we are going to teach you about Bitcoin.
Nice.
Welcome. Do you want to talk a little bit about Hedgie and what you guys do?
Yeah, sure. So we are using the Bitcoin technology of the blockchain to do financial contracts. And the first thing we're doing is removing volatility from Bitcoin. So we have a stable price. And as you know, as you can imagine, the price of Bitcoin is going up and down all the time. To be able to have a fixed price can be really valuable for a merchant, a miner, a business owner, whoever.
Got it. So if I'm a merchant and I'm accepting Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is constantly in the market, it's going up and down, but I need to make sure that I have a set amount so I can go buy more product or pay whatever. Hedgie is going to allow me to make sure that if it's worth $10,000 today, it's worth $10,000 tomorrow.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's huge.
It's big, yeah.
Cool. So thank you for being here.
Sure.
I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about Bitcoin. It's really hard to understand, and it's awesome that you're going to help us kind of explain that. And so I think one of the big things that people don't understand right now is people hear Bitcoin and they think currency, and they think Bitcoin is like $1 or the euro. But that's not actually the whole story, and that's not actually why so many people are excited about it. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the difference between Bitcoin, the currency, and kind of Bitcoin, like the protocol and the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. So you nailed that on the head. There's a big misconception, especially in the media, between Bitcoin, the technology, and Bitcoin, the currency. And the easiest way to distinguish is Bitcoin with a capital B is the blockchain, which is the technology, and Bitcoin with a small b is the currency that's traded. And so a lot of the thought leaders in the space talk about the breakthrough being in blockchain. And the reason why it's such a big deal is because they've made the first entirely secure protocol for money. So the money is in a decentralized way. You're able to send and receive value in a decentralized trust way. So if I send you a Bitcoin and I send someone else a Bitcoin, the same Bitcoin, how do you know that the one I sent you is correct? Well, in the banking world, they've done this through a number of banks and middlemen involved, verifying with each other that I had one Bitcoin in my account and I sent it to you, therefore I can't send it to somebody else. Bitcoin has done this in lines of code and through a network of computers that all agree that the Bitcoin I sent you is sent first, therefore I can't send it. So that's what's done on what's called the protocol, and that's prevented the double spend, and that's what's such a big breakthrough.
So that's what blockchain is. So
that's a blockchain.
So blockchain is specifically this technology that allows us to have, a decentralized system. There's no government that can print more money or change the ledger, right? Cool.
And then Bitcoin with a small b, as you just hinted, is the currency. So that's what I'm sending you. So Bitcoin.
Are you going to?
Yeah, I can send you some Bitcoin.
Okay, cool.
Bitcoin with a capital B is what determines the same Bitcoin hasn't been spent twice, and Bitcoin with a small b is what I'm sending you.
That makes sense. It's also a little complicated still.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy.
So capital B means technology. Lowercase b is like Matt's going to send you all his Bitcoins.
Yeah.
After you watch this. So what is it going to take, you think, to get adoption for Bitcoin? What does that look like? Is everybody going to be spending Bitcoins with a lowercase b on lunch and beer, and is that what they're going to be doing, or is it more the technology and the blockchain and the capital B?
So it's interesting. I think at first it's going to be the big B, the blockchain, that's going to get widespread adoption first. But what I love about Bitcoin, what's so fascinating, is that there isn't just one use for Bitcoin. There's many, many different types of applications that Bitcoin can be used for. So you're going to see, I think, adoption in different areas. You're going to see adoption of the currency as a store of value in places outside the US that have pretty bad economies. For example, Argentina, that has lots of inflation. People there are using it as a store of value. Whereas people in in the US, for example, are using it as a payment infrastructure. So
right.
I can send money to someone in Europe for free. I don't have to use the banks and do wire fees. I can also do that instantaneously. So right there's two different use cases, but it's exactly the same technology.
So in order for everyone to start doing this, like, what do you think has to happen?
I think first, Bitcoin has to overcome its branding problem. The media is really bad at reporting on Bitcoin. It's usually about negative attacks on Bitcoin, what's the security that's involved. So I feel like we've been past the first era of Bitcoin, which is the original players. Mt. Gox is gone,
right,
which is great. Now we're on to level 2 security, which involves something called multisig, and that's going to allow for Mt. Gox things to not happen. So we're getting there. It's slowly developing. I think until it's at version 1.0, when it's consumer friendly, when you have nice designs in the apps that are coming out, then you'll start to see consumers get more involved. But I think first movers are actually going to be more B2B side. So Bitcoin will be the background, for example, payment rails that connect banks, or background payment rails that connect countries where people are sending money between countries. I think you'll see the B2B space adopt it first before you see massive consumer adoption.
If that even happens.
Yeah, if that even happens. You may not know you're using Bitcoin, but you are actually using Bitcoin. I think a good analogy is Gmail. Before there was a nice email client that you can just click compose and start typing, email wasn't, it was limited to the few computers that were using it.
Right.
So, and just like the internet, when you look back at the internet, Mark Andreessen's Netscape, before Netscape, the consumer wasn't really on the internet.
Right. Well, and the internet was a really complicated subject. Yeah. And in order to understand, like, the internet back then meant actually a lot of technical things. It didn't mean like, oh, I'm going to go on Facebook and I'm going to go talk to this person, right? It was really technical. So I guess what you're saying is Bitcoin will get mass adoption when there's like a Netscape for Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. I think Coinbase is probably the farthest along in developing that. They're making it super easy where you just send it like email, you have a username, you're using your email to send money to people. So that's in my opinion, the best consumer app out there right now.
Right. It's like almost like PayPal, but with Bitcoin instead. Right?
Exactly.
So you mentioned multisig, and I'm sure a lot of people watching probably don't know exactly what multisig is, because that also, like Bitcoin, sounds really crazy. Mm-hmm. So we have Bitcoin, the technology, and there's a lot of interesting things you can do with that. One of them would be multisig. But there's a lot of other innovations that Bitcoin enables us to do. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like, what are some of the things that we can use Bitcoin to innovate with?
Do you want to talk about multisig first?
Yeah, let's get a short explanation of what multisig is.
I think I like to use the analogy of attaching a bike to a bike rack with 3 locks. And each of those locks are from 3 different people. So all 3 of us, we lock the one bike to the bike rack. Now it's locked in there. The bike rack owns that bike, in this case the Bitcoin. The blockchain owns the Bitcoin. In order to get the bike off the rack, all of us are going to need to use our keys to unlock our locks and release it. So that allows for a hacker coming in, and if a hacker steals my key and they try to get the bike, well, they can only unlock one of the locks. The bike still has 2 locks that are connecting it to the rack. So that allows for, in Mt. Gox case, there was 1 key.
Right. And
they got the key and they hacked a lot of the Bitcoin.
Which was horrible.
Yeah, which was horrible. And the media blew it up, and there was, people were saying this is the end of Bitcoin. And obviously, it's not the end of Bitcoin. The Bitcoin community was laughing it off because they all knew it was going to happen. There were warning signals. So now that we're on version 2 of security in Bitcoin, pretty much all Bitcoin websites are going to have this multisig implemented.
Got it. So multisig is basically like, I alone cannot decide to send my Bitcoin somewhere.
Yeah, you can even do deterministic, which is a fancy way of saying hierarchies of who has more power. So, for example, if there's 3 locks on that bike, one person could have a key that unlocks all of them.
Right.
Or one person could have a key that has to be used first before anyone else can use it. So you need approval, for example. So because it's a technology, it's always being implemented, it's always being innovated on, and there's new use cases for it all the time.
Cool. I mean, I'd much rather my Bitcoins be secured with multi-sig.
Yeah, definitely.
For
You don't
sure.
want anything else. You only want multi-sig.
Yeah. So and I think that's awesome because we had Mt. Gox, around like $400 million worth of Bitcoins were stolen. If they'd had multi-sig, which is kind of a recent development, or at least Bitcoin companies are adopting multi-sig now to make sure that they are not the next Mt. Gox and the media is not misinterpreting their story and telling that to everybody. What are some other things that have recently happened in Bitcoin?
Related to?
Just new things that you can do that are happening right now because of Bitcoin, mostly as a technology.
One area that has seen some venture capital recently is called crypto crowdfunding or crypto equity, which is you take Kickstarter and instead of it being a Kickstarter model, people are investing Bitcoins into this company or project, and instead of receiving a t-shirt, they're actually receiving equity in the company. And you're able to do a form of venture crowdfunding using Bitcoin, using the blockchain, without needing all of the middle parties, and everything is auditable. Because Bitcoin's a public ledger, you can trace every transaction that has gone into the company, and you can also trace every token, in this case, a share of the company, that has been issued to the shareholders. So there's one called Swarm, there's one called Coinify that's doing this. There's a number of different startups that are in the space right now. So that's, in my opinion, a really big application of the new applications of Bitcoin.